I think there's a lot of overlap between fans of Apple and Tesla, and a lot of people who drive Teslas or experience them would often compare a lot of the software and design characteristics to how Apple designs their phones and hardware. And sometimes you'd hear people saying if Apple were to make a car, it would be very much like a Tesla. And because there's so much overlap in these audiences, I think that's why there's so much interest and so much fascination by the audiences of what it would be like if Apple made their own car, if Apple made an electric vehicle, and how it would compare to Tesla's. Yep, make all your Windows jokes. Haha, okay, no Windows. You're very creative. Good job, everyone. But also, a lot of people genuinely thought Apple was going to develop their own vehicle and enter the automotive space, especially based off of comments Elon Musk made in interviews with Bloomberg, where he said that Apple would be more of a direct competition to Tesla. And there were a lot of cases of Apple working on a top secret Project Titan, which involved developing their own vehicle, and they were known for hiring up a lot of former Tesla employees to work on Project Titan for as far back as 2016. So because of that, for a long time, there's been a lot of suspicion on whether or not Apple wants to enter that automotive space. But personally, I don't think they want to. I think that Apple, with their size and with their extreme market cap and the genius of moving inventory that is Tim Cook, I think they see investing in an electric vehicle, from the ground up, designing it themselves, is just too risky, and there's not a whole lot of financial payoff. Doing what Tesla did is not easy, and car companies have very high operating costs, and Apple, I'm sure, is aware of how competitive the automotive space is, and they're severely behind just by the fact that they don't have any factories right now, where Tesla is with how they're scaling production. And if you listen to what Tim Cook has said more recently in interviews about autonomous driving and cars, he's mostly kind of pivoted their argument away from developing their own vehicle themselves into now investigating full self-driving software systems, which, if you've looked into a lot of the patents Apple has filed in regards to full self-driving, it would make a lot of sense that in the software department, at least, Apple is working very, very hard on figuring out how to make autonomous driving vehicles. And that is, of course, on the software end, not on the hardware end. And there's a more recent report from Digitimes floating around who does not have the most reliable track record. It's somewhere around 60% according to Apple Track, so don't believe everything they say, but it is a news story going around right now, which is why I figured it would make sense for me, as a guy who's a big fan of Apple and talks a lot about them over on my tech channel, to also give you my thoughts on this report here for EV, because it's obviously something a lot of people always ask about. And it's easy to make the headline and make the accusation, oh, this means that because Apple is working with TSMC, they're working on making their own full self-driving computer chips to go against Tesla. This means Apple's making their own car, right? Well, not exactly, because, again, I pivot back to what Tim Cook said about wanting to investigate more into full self-driving systems and knowing full well how behind Apple is compared to just any EV startup, really, that is working on their own factory. Like, Lucid has an operational factory now, Rivian is working on their factory, Tesla has tons of factories popping up all over the place, and of course there's legacy automakers that are converting their existing factories over to electric. So for that reason alone, Apple is severely behind and would have to front a lot of cash and a lot of capital to actually start making their own cars from the ground up. To seeing how Apple pitched features like Car Key with iOS 14, I think it's much more likely they're working on developing their own certified self-driving software that other car companies will buy from Apple, and similar to how Apple licenses out CarPlay right now, they just want to expand on that and start having more control over the vehicle that prioritizes safety and security, so that Apple can now get a foot in the door on full self-driving vehicles and have cars with Apple software powering them, but Apple won't have to front the money themselves to pay for all of the infrastructure needed to buy batteries and build out factory lines and actually start mass producing those vehicles. And that way, Apple doesn't have to put up service centers, they don't have to put up a charger network, they don't have to go through any of the expensive parts of bringing up your own EV startup. They can just come in and say, we have some of the best software. And if Digitimes' report is correct, this means that the one department where Apple and Tesla might actually be competing is the silicon game, which is why I have this on the screen here, because in case you're not really following Apple that closely, they've recently announced their transition away from Intel processors on the Mac line in favor of their extremely efficient and extremely powerful processors that are working in fanless architectures like the MacBook Air, so there's no cooling system in place and they're still able to get great performance. And Apple is likely seeing what Tesla is doing with their own own custom full self-driving computer and thinking, hey, since we are going to become an industry leader when it comes to CPU and GPU processing speeds that are already outperforming Intel with their dedicated hardware, they probably want to start investigating, if they want to pursue the full self-driving system route, how they can make their own silicon, and that way they can license out that hardware so that future cars are powered by Apple and Apple's handling all the software. So you basically will have EVs in the future that have CarPlay and whatever this feature is, CarPlay Plus or CarPlay Auto Steer, that kind of thing. Obviously, I don't think Apple's going to have much of a leg up on Tesla because Tesla has significantly more miles driven on the road, and using that data, it will be able to train their machine learning algorithms to make autonomous driving better over time, and Apple's not going to have that anytime soon because we're just now hearing reports of Apple partnering with TSMC, who is a chip maker, and designing their own full self-driving computer chips. They might, on a technical level, start outperforming Tesla's FSD computer, but they probably won't have the data collecting capabilities that Tesla is already collecting, and Apple likely won't be able to get too far ahead of Tesla in that department. But in case you're curious of what I think when it comes to Apple and Tesla, can they compete in any way? Is there any market or any field where they're starting to overlap a little bit? That's one I would say they could end up competing on in the future, because Apple likely knows that electric vehicles are the future, and they know that over the next decade there's going to be a mass adoption rate of new EVs, and because other car companies out there may not have the resources or capital to invest in making their own custom processors or developing their own custom software that's able to make a real safe and effective, autonomous driving experience, instead they can just license that software and maybe even some of Apple's hardware from them, incorporate them into their vehicles, and Apple doesn't have to front any of the cash, and those companies can now list their vehicle with supports Apple CarPlay and CarPlay Plus and, Apple Car Drive or whatever they end up calling it. Apple Pilot of some kind, people want to incorporate Pilot into the name. So Apple Pilot, I could see actually end up happening, but that's just what I think will happen. I'm no expert here. I'm just analyzing what Elon and Tim Cook have said in the past and trying to see what the news and leaks are suggesting about Apple's future. I could be totally wrong on this, and if you don't like speculation, that's a lot of what this channel is, so I wouldn't recommend you keep watching if you hate speculation videos, but seeing this report supports my theory of the idea of Apple basically just designing the full self-driving computer for other car companies that they can install and go along with CarPlay, and Apple will probably have a certification checklist that says, okay, auto companies, if you want to support Apple Pilot of some kind, you have to have this many cameras and you have to have these radar sensors and they have to be pointing in such a way, and if you have all those things, then we will sell you our processing chips that you can put into your vehicle, and we will charge you this much for those many chips, and that way Apple gets to be a part of the autonomous driving future without having to go through any of the financial risk of developing their own custom vehicles. That's probably not what a lot of you want to happen. I know there's a lot of us out there that just want Apple to come out with their own dedicated car. Tim Cook drives it out on stage and says, this is Apple Car, and it gets 500 miles of range, and it doesn't come with a charger, and it only costs $5 million. Yeah, I get it. You are very creative with all of your Apple Car memes. Well done, everyone. But frankly, I don't see it happening, but why do you think I'm wrong? If you don't think I'm wrong, then okay, fair enough. But feel free to let me know your thoughts on Apple and Tesla going up against each other in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Take care.